Hello there, everyone. My name is Michael James Breen. Welcome to the first ever episode of Beyond the Risers. It is a show that's going to be dedicated to the hardworking individuals who are teaching and educating our students who are performing on the stage week after week. And for this first episode, we're inviting our friends from South Windsor, Connecticut, Emma Luxemburg and Mr. Jereme Martineau, the directors of South Windsor Choral Spectrum. I'm very excited to have you both. Thank you for joining me today on this fine Sunday afternoon. So let's get started. Let's get some introductions out of the way. Whoever wants to take the lead, I just ask that you include kind of your trajectory of how you got into show choir and how many years you've been around and all that kind of fun stuff.
How many years have I been around? I have been involved in show choir every year since 1989. At first, I was a student at Windsor Locks High School, and my teacher, John Gianfrido, just inspired me so much. And was one of the reasons I went into teaching. And kind of between high school and my first teaching gig, I sort of paid the bills, believe it or not, by looking at me now. But I did choreography. I did choreography for Windsor Locks Middle School Show Choir. We started that group up to support the high school group. And then my high school director changed schools, and he had seen my work with my middle school group and invited me to do choreography for his high school group. Okay. So during that time, I did Enfield High School, I did New Britain High School, I did Metropolitan Learning Center. So a bunch of schools. It helped pay the bills and keep the lights on during college. And then my first teaching gig was in East Hartford, where I was the director of Jazz Appella. And they ran for many years, even after I left there. And then in 2004, I moved to South Windsor High School, and I have been there ever since. This is my 19th year at South Windsor and my 25th year of teaching. So
awesome.
Cool. Well, mine is by no means that long of a story, but hi everyone. My name is Emma Luxemburg. I am the assistant, in Martineau's words, co-director of Choral Spectrum. My trajectory with Choral Spectrum, or show choir in general, started in my probably third or fourth grade, when my brother was actually in the show band, and I went to go watch the competition, and I was like, oh, screw the show band, I want to be in that. Sorry, Marcus, my brother. But in 8th grade, I was in the first graduating class, if you will, of our middle school show choir spotlight. Got a taste of it, and then auditioned in the 8th grade and made it, and was in Choral Spectrum all 4 years. I was the dance captain my senior year, and then I went off to college and pursued musical theater at Wagner College in New York. Had the time of my life, and in between, like sort of on breaks and summers and all these things, I'd text Martin, I'd be like, hey, I'm home, you need anything? And here and there, and help with cleaning here and choreographing here and whatever it may be. And then COVID hit, and I texted him the same thing. I said, I'm home. I'm taking a gap year. I decided not to do Shakespeare on Zoom, and took a pause. And he was like, actually, yeah, it looks like we're doing a full-on set, and I need help. So I was like, done. And so I would come in every day, and we, learned it together, cleaned it together, did the whole thing. We didn't end up competing that year, but we did like an end of year showcase, if you will. And after having a rough, first half of the year, the kids sort of needed to get back on the rocker, if you will, of like learning it and going about it. And so it was an awesome experience to not necessarily have the competitive edge, but to get involved with show choir on the opposite end, like with no stakes, if you will, which was awesome. And then, stayed involved. And then basically Martineau said, if you ever find yourself back in South Windsor, text me. And around April or May of last year, around graduation time, I said, this is me texting you.
Awesome.
And so at that point, we, figured out the logistics and I was able to hop on board. And this has been my first year with Spectrum, and I couldn't have asked for anything better.
I was going to say, I had the pleasure of getting to meet both of you for the first time at Hendrickens Little Roadie Rumble this past March, where you guys ended up being victorious, taking all the marbles. I was best performer judge there, and one of my favorite memories of that day was me and Emma just dancing during halfway through the set, and we were just having a ball and a blast.
You're having a kiki. You're having a kiki.
We were having a kiki. We were having such a good time. Watching your show this year, I think it was such a different level of shows that I've seen you guys do in the past. These kids were so hungry. And I just want to give kudos to both of you, and actually your whole entire team. I know your son Ian is your tech director, correct, Mr. Martineau?
So my tech director is actually Matt Clyburn, who is another graduate of Windsor High School. And then, of course, Tori Brindis is our choreographer, who is another graduate of South Windsor High School. And my son Ian worked with us this year as a vocal coach and as one of the lead tech guys. So joining South Windsor Choral Spectrum is like joining the mafia. We never let you go.
That's the best. So yeah, just overall, your show this year, I think, coming off of where you guys were last year, I remember when you guys did your first shifts of your show, you changed your fourth number to your last number and all those kinds of funky stuff. And when you guys did a similar structure this year, it really flowed so well when watching it. I kind of wanted to get into the show design aspect and how you guys are now starting to create your shows and what has helped you cause a shift from your shows prior to this year and now. Just overall, from cradle to grave, what is the thought process that goes into creating these wonderful shows?
Well, I mean, obviously, the key number this year was the Bollywood closer, right?
Yes.
And this is something that we've been kind of kicking around for a few years. There's been a huge demographic shift in South Windsor. And as that happened, it immediately became apparent to us that we wanted to lean into that. We wanted to lean into the representation of who the group was. And but we wanted to do it well, and we wanted to do it respectfully, and we didn't want to be seen as kind of co-opting it, right? So it was actually a few years that number was sort of kicked around. Like we had some initial discussions, and we kind of tabled it. Then a second year, like when we really brought it to Tori, even Tori was like, "Well, let's talk to people. We really wanted to do it right." And when we got to the creative process this year, it was like, okay, we're going all in on that. So we knew that number would kind of be the kind of backbone of the whole project, if you will. And then the other numbers, we've sort of stumbled by accident into we call it four closers and a ballad.
Yes.
We just I used to spend a lot of time like analyzing the tempos, trying to shift them, and we just stopped doing that. And we're like, let's burn the house down 4 times and put a ballad in the middle and see how that works. And that's been our formula since COVID. And the kids have started developing the stamina and the chops to keep up with that. And so this year, again, we just decided to lean fully into that formula. And it obviously yielded some pretty good results for us. So.
And has it
thoughts on that too?
Say that again?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think one of the cool things, especially about this year, that I think was a strong suit of ours, is that every song was so different. And like stylistically, Tori did a great job like with the style of choreography to show that difference. And therefore it shows that our kids are versatile and can do many a different style of music. And it showed that in our choreography as well. And so it was a good challenge for them from the top, that we were like, great, and now we're gonna Vogue. Great, and now we're gonna get down and dirty with some hip. Great. And that, it was all different types of movement. And I think that also helped with the flow in a way, even though it wasn't quite like the same thing. It was like, oh, and we're shifting. All right, new thing. All right, here we go. And we had the audience had to bump every single number, which was awesome.
It felt like when you were watching Love Yourself was the fourth number. So when you're watching Love Yourself and you had that final soloist do her high note, you feel like that's just the end of the show. And then when the next soloist comes out, you're like, oh, there's more. And y'all just brought it. It brought down the house, like I said. So again, kudos for that amazing show design. I can't wait to see what's coming up next.
Neither
also,
can we. We're
it's going to be fabulous.
What do we do for an encore?
It's kind of like you have to put in your mindset of, we're not trying to top the show that we just did. We want it to be at the exact same level, but also very different to make sure that the audience sees that there is that growth and shift. We can do so many different genres and different things on stage and just make it happen. And I think, like I said, over these past 3 years for you guys, it's just been really awesome to see those changes made.
The other challenge that you have to kind of acknowledge during this process, and we this year when I was attempting to get the rights to perform Doom, it became like this whole odyssey because, of course, the rights were housed in India, right? So
Gotcha.
initially our arranger Garrett Breeze, you know, he put in the normal stuff through Trey Sona, and we were just sitting there month after month after month with it not being approved. And eventually I went on this quest, and the kids were all like putting up memes about me traveling the world trying to get the rights to this thing. And ironically, like literally months chasing down the film composer, the original composer, went to the film studio. And ironically, the last guy says, "Oh yeah, we have a process for that. We use a company called Trey Sona." And my brain almost melted. And I'm like, "Would you be so kind as to maybe send them an email and get the rights approved?" And so the rights for Doom were approved in like January or February. And we had taught it, we had learned it, and we were like, are we going to have to pull this number, right? Because we didn't.
Wow.
And there we were, like at the very end, everything came together. Gary gave us the arrangement, and we pulled it all together at the last minute. But man, that was a scary time waiting for that thing to be approved, you know?
It was very much a reality where we almost had to, get a new closer, but there was also a point in time, because that was on the back burner and we learned that latest in the process. There was a time where Martineau and I looked at each other and we were like, are we making Doom 4 and Love Yourself 5? Because Love Yourself just was getting to a better spot. And it was crazy because we obviously had this vision of Doom being the last one. And thank God we did it, obviously. But like that's how big of a difference it has like come, is that at one point Love Yourself was so electric and Doom was frankly just behind that. Like that show design wise, like we considered that for a good week or two, you know? So that adds more, you know, spice to the whole story.
And I was going to say, if I remember correctly, you guys only have morning and school practices, right? Like you don't rehearse after school, right? Or is it?
So we have a curricular class.
Yes.
And my predecessor many moons ago, man, I'm like, I can't believe we're doing this. But the show band and the kids pull extra rehearsals before school, and at 6:30 a.m. because there's no conflicts, right? There's no conflict with their jobs. There's no conflicts with sports. So it's not that we don't go after school or an evening, but it's rare. Like on a break or an extended, like we may pull a full day at some point to really try to pull it together, do costumes, things of that nature. But by and large, we keep it mostly between those goalposts, the morning rehearsals and the classes. So,
and I think that you guys are the only ones in New England who are pulling that kind of schedule right now. I know when I was working with Hendricken, so Hendricken's an all-boys school. The girls we get from all around the state of Rhode Island. A lot of folks don't know that, but the rehearsal process 1 day a week for 3 hours, and that was it. So having those extra rehearsals really truly can help make or break a season for some folks. On top of that, I can just imagine, well, let's talk about this. When you guys are doing your choreo sessions, how do you guys like to do it? Are you one of those teams that likes to do the whole show in one whole week during the summer, or do you do it multiple weekends during the fall time?
We've actually done both.
Mm-hmm.
But recently we've moved more to a everything all at once model at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of that whole ball of wax was transferred to Emma to make it happen. So.
Nice.
I don't know if she wants to speak to that process at all, but it was
sure. I mean, yeah, when I was in Spectrum, we did a long weekend in September and a long weekend in November. And I think either works. I think there's pros and cons to both. You could tell by the end of the week this year that the kids were like on overload because we were learning like all the songs. But yeah, I think that it definitely gave them a challenge. I think any group that's in that scenario, there's reasons why you do this, because you want it like all at once and you want to have all the time to make work on it. And one could say that when you get a number in November, will it be as strong as a number in September? Who knows? But I mean, it worked for us. I believe we're doing that again next year. So yeah, that's just the way that we do that.
Sweet. And
sometimes it's as simple as when can Tori fit you in too, because Tori's a busy.
Yes, she is. Do you teach the vocals beforehand, or are you just get the choreo on the bodies first, and then since we have the class, we'll teach the vocals later?
Yeah, so normally we start in September. School starts late end of August. Our choreography week is somewhere in the first 3 weeks of September normally. So it's they won't have started the vocals, but they'll barely we'll have touched on maybe the opener and the second tune, trying to give them some familiarity to give them a fighting chance with the choreography, and just post as many demo tracks as are ready so they can listen to them a lot and get a feel for it, and then do their best during choreo week, and then pick up the pieces afterwards. Then we kind of put together a schedule of this is how we'll lay out rehearsals, and Emma would take certain rehearsals and I would take certain rehearsals. Sometimes we would switch midway. We're on a modified block schedule, so we have about 77 minutes per rehearsal.
Oh, that's good. Yep.
So we try to break up, especially early on, kind of toggle back and forth. And then when the vocals sort of took shape, we found that our best rehearsals when we sort of abandoned that format, and Emma would run rehearsal and I would just chime in and attach vocal changes to the choreography. And the process of memorizing those two things simultaneously really made a difference and really improved the work that we were doing. So,
yeah. And also, just because you brought it up, let's talk about these costumes, man. Let's talk about these costumes this year. I think when we were at Hentriken and I saw the show for the first time, I had seen it online prior to. I was just like, I gotta see him in person. I gotta see this in person. When I saw those rompers, let me just tell you, I died. If I had to assume, were those costumes done by the Miss Gail McInnes?
Yes.
And it
was. Go ahead, Em.
It's from House of Paul, I believe. I need to double check the name of that, but it is Gail and
Mr. Lanu.
So thank you, Randy. Yes.
Mr.
So it's a team effort for sure. Gail was on speed dial for fittings, and Randy was on speed dial for logistics, but both happened. Yeah, they came out beautiful. Full credit to Tori for finding the vision, if you will. And then on my end, we came up with the color contrast. And then we had many a help from a local seamstress to make it all, work. But yes, definitely came out. And I'm pretty sure at least 2/3 of our judges tapes, the first thing they say right off the bat is they're like, beautiful costume, loving these colors. Like everyone had something to say.
It's just the way that blue and orange looked on stage. Like my brain always goes to design first, and those details that you look at on stage are like, I can see every picture perfectly because these complementary colors are working so well for my group. And your costumes
on top of that,
for years.
It's the line of the romper and the line of the jacket, like the clean lines of everything you're able to see because that white elongates all their lines and everything. So
I just needed a little plug for that moment because you guys truly had my favorite costumes of this season, and I had to just ask. Um, so following off of all of this, we can start talking about some of the challenges that we had faced this past year for you guys. I know, Mr. Martineau, your first competition, were you down and out? Was that the case scenario? I remember reading something on Facebook. Um,
So I
The Facebook.
so I just went to the Board of Education the other night and kind of
mhm,
we told our story of the season, and I in introducing it to the Board of Ed, I said, if you had told somebody this story, they would say that's not possible. It's too cheesy. It's like a sports movie, right? Like the elements that went into this season, when you look at it in hindsight, are just mind blowing that it all came together the way that it did. And kind of just
mhm,
prior to the competitive season, things were going okay. Like the
mhm,
show was coming together, but like I said, we got doomed so late. We're panicking over that.
mhm.
So there was some drama, like things tend to flare up with teenagers and all the stuff that was
Yep.
going on. And we were nervous going into that first show. And then the week of the show, I tested positive for COVID. And I
No.
I called up Emma and I'm like, we're gonna have to pull the plug on this thing. And she and I just started talking and we're like, we can't do it. Like the kids, we started later than everyone. We normally
Mhm.
do, just because of
Yeah.
our schedule. And
Mhm.
now there's a gap in the schedule. So if we had not gone to Tantascwa, the first time they would have performed that show would have
Right.
been Andover, and it just would have been a morale killer. So instead of
Which is just for an audience that wouldn't know, that's a whole month later, like
whole month
4
later,
weeks,
True.
five,
Yes.
5 weeks. And they were already like, you could tell they were already bursting at the seams. Like they needed to have something to look
Something.
forward to.
Mhm.
For us to pull that and be like, nope, sorry, wait 5 more weeks would have been season ending,
it
to
would
say
have
the
been
least.
Yeah.
we were looking at the end of the road. So Emma was like, let's just think way outside the box. And we got Tori on
Mhm.
the phone. Everybody's just throwing out ideas. And we figured out that we could do the whole day with Emma's blood, sweat, and tears if we could just figure out 15 minutes. And we just need to figure out, because I direct the show band, which is unusual.
Right.
So
Yep.
I don't have a separate director. So like the 15 minutes we were on stage, what could we do? And Tori looks at us and says, my sister Kate is going to be there and she'll be done for the day. And we called
Love
up
Kate.
Kate, and Kate was just like, yeah, bring it on. We sent her the, that's not exactly what she said, but
We will censor what she said.
but she was all in without question. I sent her all the materials.
Mhm.
The ball went over to Emma. She started the prep process, and then she actually did everything from that point forward. So I'm going to let her tell the rest of the story because she tells it well. So Emma's Fantasqua tale, so we'll let you do that.
Let's hear it.
Yes. Let's see. No, so just for an audience that wouldn't know, Kate Burns is Tori Brindis' sister, both alumni of South Windsor High School. So again, this
Yep.
whole story will have that sort of reoccurring theme, right? So yeah, we text her and I said, crazy idea, but could you direct the show band? Keeping in mind that our demo tracks are recorded by Kate, thankfully. So she already sort of knows the music. Like obviously
Yep.
she hasn't touched it since, but she's aware of it, right?
Mhm.
And also Kaz, who's Tori's husband, but love you, Kaz. But he's not an alumni of South Windsor High School. So she was like, yeah, let's do it. Done. And I was like,
Mhm.
great. So we assembled like the Avengers, if you will. It was me, Ian, which thank God he was there. He was like right-hand man the whole day. And in every sense of the word, he was Minnie Martineau that day.
Yeah.
Obviously, when she was done with her group, she was all in with us. Clyburn, our tech director, was there. And also Mr. Stead, Jeffrey Stead, who's a teacher at the high school, and is alumni of South Windsor High School, alumni of Choral Spectrum as well. Same as Kate. Kate was in Choral Spectrum as well. And so Jeff stepped up to sort of be like another chaperone, just another, pair of hands, if you will, for that day.
Mhm.
And so to the point where we were like, okay, we have all the people we need. Like, let's make this happen. So that happened on Thursday that Martineau called me at about noon and said, I got COVID. By Thursday night, we figured out we could pull it off. Friday afternoon, we had kids come in for our like dress rehearsal that we do every Friday before a Saturday comp. And we basically, for lack of a better word, sat them down and had like a come to Jesus moment, like a kumbaya, if you will, where I was like, listen, here's our scenario. We can't change it. But what's in our hands right now is how we're going to handle it and how well we're going to handle it. And so we basically just had like a big old, like, everyone was locked in at that point. Like everyone just wanted to go so bad that they were just grateful that we were going, right? Like that they were very aware that the other option was not going at all. And so they're like, great, let's do it and let's do it well.
Yeah.
And we ran the show in front of like family and friends and their teachers. And it was a good like way to get morale up. Everyone was sort of like antsy, but ready to go. Next day, get the kids on buses, you know, we get there. Shout out to the Tantascwa staff and volunteers of that competition. They were angels, to say the least, that day. Very supportive and let us know that we could, you know, if we needed anything, they would let us know. So along those same lines, that anything we needed that day, we set up a makeshift band rehearsal in their gym, full equipment, amps, everything in their gym. The second that Kate had basically eaten lunch, she headed over to the gym and ran a band rehearsal for like 45 minutes with our band, who again, antsy, but very much bought in.
Wow.
It went great. Checked in on it a couple times. It went great. They go to set up. Kids are getting ready. We're in the warm-up room at this point. Like everyone's nervous, right? Like from top to bottom. Me and Ian are like shaking in our boots. Kate's in the corner, like pretending to conduct while like we're playing the tracks. It's crazy. And we get to the end. We're like so hype. Like we're like screaming. I'm like jumping on chairs. Like things are happening. And we get to this ending circle. And if anyone who knows Martineau knows that his warm-up room ending circle speeches are like nothing else. Like I would just attend competitions for that, nothing more, because you don't finish those and you're like, you want to run through a wall. Like it is so inspirational. It's so hype. So the whole warm up, I'm like racking my brain about like, what am I going to do? What am I going to, I have to like be Martineau. I have to like do this speech like Martineau would. And I decided that I would just steal Martineau's Facebook post that he had posted earlier that day. If anybody wants to read it, you can go to his Facebook. But long Facebook post, and a lot of it sounded exactly like what he would say if he were there right then. And so I pulled out my phone and I said, guys, I'm going to read you a little excerpt of what Martineau would say if he were here. And funny enough, like usually the first competition is like, let's go, like first time they're going to see it, like blah, blah. And obviously there was that energy. But by the time I was done reading that post, and frankly, it was mostly me, but also a lot of the kids, tears were a-flowing, right? Because it was just the gratitude of the moment that like we pulled it off. And not only are we going to pull this off, we're going to show them something that they're not expecting at all. And it was this little secret we had. And obviously it didn't go quite the way we wanted it in the sense of the logistics. But gosh, did they go out there? Oh, no, not now. Gosh, did they go out there and did they do exactly everything we needed them to do and they needed for themselves too. And it was, oh my God, I was having like the time of my life back there next to the sound guy, like jumping around and screaming, like high-fiving Ian the whole time. It was crazy. I'd never seen them that way. I've never heard them that way. They self-actualized on that stage. They were the best version of themselves. I say that a lot. That's like a very like common phrase that I say is like just be the best version of yourself. And gosh, were they. And we got in that warm-up room and they were just beaming. And I was like, we say this all the time. We could pack up right now. Like we could go home right now and I'd be so happy. Like that's all I needed. And so the rest of the day was just, you know, the logistics of packing up and congratulating the kids and the kids just feeling really good about themselves. And we got to the awards ceremony. And again, surrounded by the Avengers, if you will. And I just kind of looked at them all and I was like, guys, I really could care less what happens right now. Because what matters is that we put it on stage and we did, frankly, the impossible. Like Martineau has never not been at a competition, let alone the first one. And to say he's, you know, the cornerstone, let alone the patriarch of this, you know, legacy is to say the least. So we were already doing the impossible. There's a sort of saying that like spectrum is gold and it's gone for years and years. Yes. And so there's a sort of unspoken hope and goal that we get gold, right? And so if anything, that's what I hoped, is that the kids could get gold and feel good about themselves and feel like they were upholding that sort of legacy. And so they get gold. Everyone's crying. Everyone's happy. Again, at that point, I was like, let's go. Like, let's pack them up. I don't even need to be here anymore. Like, we did it. We're done. And I think I was actually like talking to Ian or something. I voice memoed this. That's the only reason I know why. I voice memo a lot of things. I'm talking to Ian. I'm talking to Kate. I'm not even paying attention, honestly. And all of a sudden they called second runner up and they didn't say our name. And I was like, huh. And I clocked it. And I was like, interesting. And then they called first runner up and they said Choral Spectrum. And again, in the audio, you heard like craziness, because the day was not about, rarely is it ever, but that day specifically was not about the trophies and the plastic and the this and that. It was the last thing on our brains. And so for us to go out there and get top 2 out of an already competitive season where it was our first showing, was unprecedented, to say the least. And what a great like way to start off. I mean, I don't know the logistics specifically, but it was the best start, maybe possibly in Choral Spectrum history, in the sense of like, at least from a large mixed, because back in the used to be small mixed, but like ridiculously good start. And the kids were so psyched, and if anything, it was exactly what we needed with the worst situation having been given to us. It was exactly what we needed to, 1, unite us, but 2, to be like, okay, we've got something special on our hands. Like, this is just the beginning, you know? And we needed that for the month going forward to lead us into Andover.
And this story in general is probably one of my favorite things of this whole entire past season. Just because it's a testament of your kids being truly amazing at what they do. And it's also a testament for the staff side too, of how your kids are able to pull themselves together when their director is out. It's just very, very, very heartwarming to see that the community, other schools were telling you, we want you to come, we want you to be here, we will make sure that you are taken care of in any sort of standard. I think that's something special that we have up in New England in general. Because growing up in the circuit myself too, I graduated in 2018, and just watching New England Show Choir over these past couple of years, it kind of feels like the community is just getting tighter and tighter. Because I remember when I was going through high school, it was kind of all over the place. Everyone was kind of in their separate cliques, but now everyone's like truly cheering on for each other, making sure that everyone's taken care of. Because at the end of the day, we just want to watch show choirs. We want to have our kids have the best performances that they can have. They work so hard during the school year, and watching them actually get on stage and do their thing, that's it right there. That's the icing on the cake for everything. So again, I'm so happy that you guys were able to start the season with a bang. And again, you ended on a bang too. That win at Hendricken, we touched upon it a little bit in the beginning. What were your thoughts going through this? Because that was your first win since what? 2018.
2018.
So
well, interesting when you look at the big picture, right? Like you can't discount the importance actually of the week before when we went to Andover. In Andover, the kids came in 5th, and that could have taken the wind right out of their sails. Right? And
it did it did.
And then when you drill down into the numbers, you essentially saw like it was like a 4-way tie for second in choreography. We kept calling it like a 10-car pileup, right? It was like it was just everything was so close. And when you looked closely at the numbers, we were extremely competitive with Waltham. And by the way, to Waltham, who not only an amazing program, an amazing group, but amazing human beings too. So love you guys. But when we saw those numbers and we presented them to the kids, we're like, it's right there, right? If you want this, if you're willing to work hard and revisit it one more time, right, we can get there, right? And fast forward to the 1 week, and just all day the kids just believed, right? They believed
Mm-hmm.
that they could do it. They believed that it was possible. And when they had their opportunity, when they had their moment, they took their shot and left it all on the stage. And
Mm-hmm.
we end up where we end up at the end of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just an incredible moment, and a moment of perseverance that pushes through from Andover to Rhodey.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, so we've touched upon quite a bit of the programmatic side. Um, I want to know a little bit of the history, more of the history of South Windsor in general. So during the years that I was involved in show choir, so that was 2014 up until 2018, you saw a shift like halfway through my high school experience. Um, I think it's when you guys did bring in Tori for the first time. What was that like being able to bring back alumni who had started working with some of the largest groups in the country, like FC, North Central, a bunch of these groups in Indiana? How did that feel to be able to bring that back home? And you can tell me about the perspective as a student, because you were a student during that time, Miss Emma and Mr. Martineau. From your side, how did you feel with making that decision and sticking with it?
Well, I mean, like, there's just so much history prior to that
Mm-hmm.
in New England show choir in general. I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't show up on showchoir.com. Like, we had
Mm-hmm.
been floating near the top of the heap in the early 2000s for a long time, like
Okay.
grand champions and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the show choir community in and of itself just shifted like
Mm-hmm.
light years in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And groups like Shepherd Hill and Daniel Hand just pulling the artistry to an entirely new level in a
Mm-hmm.
very short window of time, and a lot of us playing a lot of catch up there.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been sort of a traditionalist show, so like
Mm-hmm.
my whole time. And even then I was trying, because they were such strong thematic shows, I was trying to pull together thematic shows. And it just kind of came across as I was trying to be a Daniel Hand cover band. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it just wasn't our authentic selves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward to bringing Tori on board. First of all, I can't express the gratitude and the just the resurgence of energy and vitality that she brought to the creative process. And now fast forward and seeing that continue with Emma coming on board and again re-injecting the entire process with just vitality and energy.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for a little while now, and the old man could use a kick in the pants every now and then. And it's nice when the grads come on board to do that.
And I will gladly do that.
And that's what, and that was the shift there, right? Was just
Mm-hmm.
Tori just brought a lot of that Midwest experience and energy. And what was that like? I mean, it's a weird mixture of suddenly I was the student, right? I was open
Yeah.
to learning from her, and so reversing that, and just being humble enough to see that her experience was valuable to tap for my experience, and that just was a new launching pad, and that coincided with Emma's senior year, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and we went from 0 to 60, like, and suddenly we were back, right, like right in
Uh-huh.
the thick of things, kind of right up through COVID, and then there's that little dip again, and then kind of
Mm-hmm.
up out of that. So I don't know if Emma has anything she wants to add to that, but
Yeah, I think very similar, ends here. But yeah, when I first saw Choral Spectrum as third grader Emma, that was like screw the band. That was at what, yeah, like mid 2000s, early 2010s, if you will. And yeah, it was like Grand Champ, Grand Champ, Grand Champ. They were also like a smaller group, if you will, at that point, but it was like we were known for our vocals and our tight choreo and blah, blah, blah. And at that point, it was Kathy Munson, who was my childhood dance teacher and owned like a local studio in town. Also, Tori's childhood dance teacher.
No way.
Yeah, Footloose Dance Academy.
That's awesome.
Well, the funny story is, and I was saying this to Tori earlier this year, is that I'm pretty sure, like maybe don't have the receipts to prove it, but I'm pretty sure Tori was like my like student assistant in like my baby like ballet tap combo class. And I was like,
imagine.
She was like in high school. And so I'm like, we've met like way back. You don't remember me, but so anywho, like that is the like other version of my high school experience, is that we were choreographed by Kathy Munson. And my freshman senior year was the only 3 years, correct me if I'm wrong, Martineau, that we did this like theme show. And going off, frankly, using Martineau's words, it just wasn't us. And it's very well done by other groups in the circuit, as we know, and outside the circuit, but it just never really clicked for us. Thankfully, my senior year was when we got back to our roots, and also brought in Tori and Jared Voss in that process. And it was exactly what we needed at that time. And we just had, if I don't say so myself, a great senior class to foster that in. And just the right ingredients everywhere. And it was just the perfect mix of like all the right things, and a very similar story. Like we started the year not really sure how it was going to go, and came out swinging, got third place. And at that point, I forget the exact scoring system, but it was like 2 of the 4 judges had us in first. And so we were like, whoa, like what? And the same sort of scenario. We were like, what do we have in our hands here? And then the next one, like some visitors came, if you will. And we got like 3rd or 4th. And then the last competition of the year got first. And so it was a very similar story. Sincerely felt like it was repeating itself in a lot of ways this year. And yeah, it was a very, very much what the legacy, the program, if you will, needed. And I'm so glad that Tori.
Just a little add on to that too, while we're sharing a little Kathy Munson love. Munson was my choreographer in 1989 too. She was very young at the time and before her kids. And so she was my choreographer then. Then when I moved to South Windsor, I taught her children in South Windsor. I'm telling you, like I said, it's the mob. You don't get away from South Windsor.
Everything is so full circle for you guys. Let me just tell you, I think seeing how many alumni that come back to your program, again, a true testament to being such a fabulous teacher, that they want to come back and give you their all to help you or want to be with you.
Thank you.
It's probably one of the greatest feelings, knowing that your students can come to you, because I remember, I only did it for 4 years when I was assisting Paramount afterwards. But when students come to you and you have those life talks and you are able to work with them as an adult on that side of the fence, it's a whole new playing field, new experiences, and it makes you just so grateful for the time that you were able to know them when they were younger, and seeing them now flourish as the working professionals that they are.
Talking about you, Luxemburg.
No, it's so funny you say that, because a lot of that I agree with, but also there's a part of me that's like, my dynamic as the senior dance captain, Emma, in 2018 versus my dynamic with Martineau now, there's very little change, at least on my end. Like we are in constant contact. I'm like, what should we do for class tomorrow? Here's my plan. Deal. All right. I'm like, I'm thinking this. Yeah, sounds good. All right. Like it's very much like open communication. We're always bouncing ideas off of each other. Even back then, senior year Emma was like, I think we need to work more on this by Friday. Is that okay? Yeah, sounds good. We're always like, bada bing, bada boom. You know what I mean? And obviously like that dynamic, I was younger and still figuring it out, but it was because of that year specifically, like that I had that leadership experience, that I am the co-director I am today, because we have this very familiar dynamic that we've kept up through the years. That it a lot obviously changes because we both have changed over the years, but a lot is very similar and very muscle memory.
For sure.
Yeah. So we're covering so many topics, y'all. I'm loving this right now. So one of the other things that comes to mind when I think about your program in general, is, like you said, the Good Songs Done Well kind of thing that you guys have been doing for your thematic sort of shows. Do you think that So being in New England, we kind of have a mixture of all of it, where you do your story shows, you have your heavily themed shows, or you have your good songs done well shows. Um, do you are you seeing a shift right now where a lot of people are going towards the story more the story side of things, connecting more with musical theater? Um, because that's something that when I was watching shows this year, it felt a lot more musical theater driven story shows. Even Waltham had a story associated with their show. Um, and I'm finding it super interesting because there are certain directors in our circuit that like what they like and don't really venture out. I just wanted to know your opinions about where New England show choir is kind of sitting right now, and uh, anything that you have to offer in that. Love this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I've always been extremely collaborative with the team that I've hired. So it's not that I'm opposed to theme shows. I actually some of my favorite shows that I put together were those theme shows because I'm
Mm-hmm.
a geek. So I love
Mm-hmm.
diving deep into the lyrics and like I want to tell this story. So what songs would
Mm-hmm.
actually help me do that, right? But when there's not a lot of thrust from the creative team in that direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that Tori doesn't do theme shows. She just doesn't lean in that direction. If you look at the
Mm-hmm.
group she works with, it's much more traditionalist, and that is my sort of default position too. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
open to that, and I really like to try to give everybody on the team, regardless of their title or role, sort of an equal say. Garrett Breeze, our arranger, like has contributed some of the best songs in our shows the past few years. Just
Mm-hmm.
like I didn't like, no, don't love that song. Hey, check this song
Mm-hmm.
out. Fantastic. Thank you, Garrett. Right. I'm
Mm-hmm.
good. Last year, our closer last year was Bird in the House.
Yes.
Garrett Breeze original Garrett Breeze arrangement, excuse me, that wasn't on my radar. I didn't know that song. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just say, hey, what do you think of this? And we're like, whoa, right? Like that was a showstopper, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of giving everybody a voice. We have a giant shared playlist, and we all just dump songs in and start batting it around, right? Like who likes what, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I feel like New England itself has actually kind of shifted. I feel it's more balanced than it was actually. And maybe I'm just predating the pandemic, but there was a time where I was a lonely wolf out there with my traditional show, right? And I think that
Okay.
was a large measure due to, I mean, like Daniel Hand's explosion of
Yes.
success, right? There's, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people falling in line with that, trying to replicate that. And
Mm-hmm.
by the way, that was pioneered by Connie Galley and Shepherd Hill. If you go back to
Yes.
my years of show choir, we were
Mm-hmm.
all doing 4 songs, and Connie Galley showed up with um, her first theme show. It was this anti-war protest show. I still remember it vividly to this day. It changed the way I saw show choir, and
Mm-hmm.
and they never looked back. They never looked back. Shepherd Hill did that from 1993 until till this year, right? It's always some sort of narrative story, but we go in just incredible directions and incredible creativity on
Mm-hmm.
the behalf of the Shepherd Hill creative team. And so I think a lot of people kind of during the years where Shepherd Hill and Hand kind of went back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
first and second. I think a lot of people tried to replicate that success. And I think as you saw kind of the rise again of Waltham and
Mm-hmm.
kind of this year they had kind of a theme running through it. Tori likes to
Mm-hmm.
call those threads when it's not like a distinct theme, but the songs are sort
Yeah.
of linked, right. When you have something like that, but most of the time Waltham's a traditional 4
Yeah.
songs and done,
Yep.
and all of a sudden they were going neck and neck with Hand too. So I think you saw
Yep.
kind of everybody opened up their lens again and said, well, maybe we'll try doing that kind of show and lean into what are our strengths. So I think it's much more of a kind of uh, diverse kind of potpourri of multiple styles and genres at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the theme product that just continuously blows my mind every year is the work of Tantasqua. Um,
Yes.
Tantasqua's
Yes.
ferocious and fearless creativity always astounds me, and I always finish my first show of the year, and regardless of how Spectrum's done, and this year we did great. But
Mm-hmm.
I walked out of the first year going, I wish I was that brave and that creative. They are astoundingly creative and gutsy with
Yeah.
funny creative shows. So hats off to the
And
Tantasco.
God,
Yeah.
so smart. The amount of things that happen in that set, and I'm like, you have to be
Yes.
so smart to come up with that. Like, it's just so witty and let alone hilarious. Like,
So,
yeah, hats off.
so little tidbit, because my boyfriend lives 20 minutes away from Chantasqua, I got to go to their end of year show. And let me just tell you, it was fabulous. Don't get me wrong. But they added some more changes to it. So like their home show, like it's just their friends and family. It's no competition added. They still brought out the prop heads. Let me just tell you, you with your Yoda ears.
Love it.
those still came out, but the kids, they didn't do anything that was like inappropriate or anything. It was, they added some silly changes where like they were carrying a girl out while she was doing her solo. And like you were saying, the creativity of some of those shows that we're seeing now, especially Tantasco, just because that they just take it to the full, like 100%. We're doing this. We're gonna dive all in. It's just very, very interesting, to say the least, to show how different shows can be done in this area in particular, because we're kind of all we're shut off from the Midwest. We have our onesie twosies where people like to come up and visit us, like Auburn did this year, and so did Cosby from Virginia. But it's usually just us. It's usually the same groups at every single competition going through, and being able to entertain your audiences, feeling like it is a different show at each competition. I think it's a true testament, especially when, like I said, it's the same groups going to each of them. Yeah, it's been a wild ride, to say the least. I think in New England, it feels like this past year was like the real first year post COVID that it did not affect everyone. It felt like the numbers for each group were back to where they were prior to COVID. Like I know that like Shepherd Hill Fantasy still recouping a little bit. They had 50 plus kids for most of their tenure. This year they had under 30. Whereas like Waltham has been consistently 50, 54, some upwards of 60. But this year it really felt like everyone was on their A game and was hungry. Yeah.
One of the things
So
I
major-
realized too is that one of the seniors this year were freshmen during the 2020-2021 season. So they didn't get them at the competitive season their freshman year. And so part of that, I just like love that story, because one of our student leaders, Ryan Brass, brought that up at our board event meeting. And I was like, that is so interesting, because there has to be some psychological line in this of like, these are the kids that sort of brought this back. You know, they were the ones that got taken that experience, if you will. And they said, nope, we're gonna bring it right back.
Sweet. So thinking about the future and where you guys are right now, have you guys started thinking about where you don't have to tell anything about plans for next year, but when do you guys usually start planning your shows for South Windsor? And are you guys currently in the middle of doing that?
So normally I would have started, accumulating songs into a basic playlist, usually following Christmas, right? Like just counter a tune, throw it in a playlist, revisit it later. But now I have the show choir bloodhound that is my son that I have turned loose. I said, go forth, Ian, and find me show choir song. And in my shared playlist, I believe there's like 3 songs from me and 25 from him so far. So he's on it. He's on it, and nice. He's trying to complete the mission as assigned. But normally, like we actually put on a final performance that's all different material. All my groups combine to do a pops concert, right? So it's not as difficult, it's not as challenging, but it's all the groups: the treble choir, the concert choir, and choral spectrum form it's like a mini theatrical production with
Cool.
props and special effects and stuff like that. And we're doing a Michael Jackson tribute this year. So
nice.
So that sort of takes up our bandwidth until kind of the end of May, at which point we'll have to hit the ground running, right? Like, because Garrett wants those songs early, so he can chip away at the stone as soon as humanly possible. So I wish I had a sense of the direction we're going, but the battle has been joined.
Good. Because it's always varying.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
I was gonna say, usually I know some director friends, they plan their show at like the very end of summer, like after they go to SCA. I feel like I would have too much anxiety waiting until the last minute, because you also have to. The other thing a lot of people don't understand when it comes to show choir is you live with these songs for longer than a year usually. How do you live with these songs without getting bored? What do you do to make it feel fresh every single time that you're singing it, or when you're performing it on stage, or even just rehearsing with it? How are you going to make this last and not have it be stale once you hit that last competition of the year, but that's good.
Convincing the kids of that, right? Like,
yeah,
kids are just, generally speaking, they get it to a certain point, and where you can really separate the champions from the groups are the groups that are willing to go back under the hood that 5th, 6th, 7th time, right? And and reinvest in the material again. And again, that was spearheaded by our great student leader group this year. Like, they kept back in there, and Emma kept them very, very honest. So that's how that all worked out, for sure.
Yeah,
a tight ship over there at South Windsor High School. Well, I think that part of it too is that some buzzwords, if you will. I very much run, and this is I do this during the day, but I also teach for dance groups and competitive teams and stuff at night. And it's a similar situation where you go and you compete and you get these critiques back, and then you compete again and you get right. And in my brain, and I was a comp kid too and did choral spectrum and everything, in my brain, critiques are like free money. It's like they are literally telling you, like, very clearly what's working and what's not, right? There's some things you take and some things that roll off your back, and everybody's 2 cents, obviously. But if something is repeated more than once by a certain judge, or at one comp and it happens again, it's obviously something we need to take care of, right? And so there's a few things that went to the wayside, but I take critiques, and the next day, like, comp happens on Saturday, I take those critiques on Sunday. I typed them all up. I itemized them. They are color coded. They are in the specific section they happen. And we figure out exact, like, how much days we need to spend on each song and who's going to cover which sections and blah, blah. Like, that is free money for me. And so I'm like, we should be using that. Right? And I think because we had that sort of growth mindset throughout the year from this first, like, from the jump of the first competition, the kids were hungry is the word we've been using this whole time, but it's true. Like, they were hungry for, okay, what did they say? Okay, what did they say? Especially my student leaders. They were like, they were texting me every, okay, what
they want to know.
Okay, what?
Yep.
Exactly. Because I think I think there's easily, we could have said, like, that's just what they think, right? And I think that that's a different mindset, if you will. And I think that at some points in my choral spectrum career as a student, maybe I would have thought that way. And so I really want to, like, put some, respect on my kids, that they're able to be like, okay, great, what did we do wrong? Or like, okay, great, what can we do?
Yep.
And that's not what every group thinks, And so it's a testament to their ability to want to do better, want to do more. I mean, like, the Friday before our last competition, they willingly stayed after school. And we usually just, like, throw on the costumes, do the set, go home. They willingly stayed for like 2 hours, and we had, like, a full throttle rehearsal, going through every single critique, like, we had a list of things we wanted to apply by the next day. And they willingly were there on a Friday after school when any of them could be doing anything else because they wanted to do that. And they were rewarded with that, and that's exactly how I would describe, how we go about that process on our end.
And to build off on top of that, a lot of folks know this, but just to reiterate, New England Show Choir, we don't have finals at our competitions. So when you get your critiques at the end of a competition, you just sit on those critiques, you bring them back to your rehearsal. And sometimes the comp spans, we don't have a comp every single weekend. Towards March, we tend to, but usually you have that first competition at Lowell in January. You wait another 2 weeks until Shepherd Hill. Tatax was after that. Then you have another 2 to 3 weeks because you have February break for a lot of schools. And then it was Danahan. Now it's back to being Somerset as that fourth comp slot. Another week goes by, then it's Andover, then Hendricken, another pause of the week, and then Waltham. So there's a lot of time in between these comps, usually, that you can sit on critiques and you can work these in. And like you said, the fact that your kids were asking you, what did they say? What can we do better? It just shows that the dedication's there, the kids want it, and it's just going to continue. Hopefully, it's going to continue being this way. Because once you get that bite for show choir, I don't think it goes away for a lot of folks.
Here I am. Never left. I lost my thought there. Sorry, keep going.
What I was going to say is that when we since you're a director on the director side, you could probably tell me more about this, but not every single competition has clinics, correct? Or do most of them in New England have?
Yeah. We had, there was not one in Andover.
Andover. Oh, yeah. Two of the three we went to had.
So during that process, during clinics, are you guys usually taking notes during it, or are you just sitting there and absorbing and listening? Because I've heard people doing both. I think for me, I always like to take the big pictures and just like listen and be present. But I know that there are folks who like to actually write down every little thing. I know a lot of the judges are really good with writing down their critique notes. But how do you apply those critiques? And when you're in that process, what's your mind going through? Because I know, again, when I was in those seats and I was just sitting there, I was always overwhelmed and I didn't know how to truly take it all in. Anyone can take this.
I'm usually waiting for the moment where the judge says the thing I've said 7,000 times. And the kids will do one of two things. They'll look at it like, that's amazing. Or they will turn with guilty eyes over their shoulder and feel the burning laser beams from my eyes in the back of their heads, knowing that it was going to happen. Besides that, I'm a big picture guy too. I like to kind of hang back and process it. I think M is scrawling everything down or voice memoing it, one of the two.
Again, it's like it's free points, like it's free money for me. So a lot of it. Oh well, frankly, the first competition we went to, I was like not all there. So I was dealing with asthma attacks and all these things. So I didn't get a single word of that thing. But I talked to our clinician and I asked her to type up and send Lex Robinson. Thankfully, she sent us her notes, which was great, and those were invaluable to say the least. But our last clinic of the year was a little different, if you will, than most clinics. In the best way. I have a voice memo of that I will forever keep. It was, Martineau, you describe it really well, but it was a culmination of our season, to say the least. And we have it was our last competition, and I think that the judges sort of could comprehend that in a way. And so, frankly, there was little to nothing talked about in the sense of like logistics of our set. It was just a celebration of like what we've been able to put together and the effect it had, to say the least, on those that watched it and the joy that it brought. And our last clinic is one that I think us and our kids will remember forever.
Awesome. You actually bring up a really good point. So I have two more questions. I'll get that right off the bat right now. The first is a little bit more in depth because it just popped in my brain. Because in show choir, especially, you have a lot of varying opinions. This can go for both sides. What can this younger generation of show choir professionals be learning from our more tenured and senior folks, and vice versa? What can our senior and tenured folks learn from our fresh out of college or first helping kind of gig? What do you think about those dynamics, and how do you think that that is helping shift your program and just show choir in general? Because I'm seeing a lot more of it now. A lot of directors are calling back to their alumni because their alumni want to be there. They want to teach because they caught that bug when they were a student. And I love hearing varying opinions about this, because there's going to be an episode coming up where I'm going to be doing a nice little young alumni in the works, talking about what it's like to be in their first year of being a choreography cleaner, choreographer, even director. Just anything you guys have to say about that.
I think it's for me, like I had mentioned earlier, right? Like I've been doing it for so long now that you have to be humble enough and to step out of that, like I'm the carrier of all knowledge, and realize the minute you adopt that stance, you stop learning. And the minute you stop learning, you stop growing, right? So when it's not an exaggeration about the infusion of energy that Tori brought when she came, the infusion of energy that when Emma and Ian and those guys took the group to Tantascwa, 24 hours after I told her I wasn't going, she had t-shirts made. She's wearing it, I think. What could go wrong? Is that what you're wearing? She had t-shirts made, handed out to all the staff, multicolored glasses given out to all the kids that they wore all day, that some of them used on stage.
Yes.
This is like 24 hours notice. So like, where she should have been sitting there going, oh my God, I've been put on the bridge of a potentially sinking boat, she instead got behind the boat and started kicking like crazy, right? And brought it into shore, right? Like, I mean, it was, and that's a testimony to not only the energy of a young collaborator, but also like they don't know what they don't know, which is amazing. Like if it had been reversed and somebody said to me, Jereme, we need you to take this show choir, not my group, on this weekend, I'd be like, absolutely not.
Nope.
There's no way I am doing that. And I was like, Emma, Kate, Ian are like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. And then for them to pull it off, right? Just so energizing and invigorating for, like I said, the old dog needs to learn new tricks, right? So I learned so much from those guys, and I'm so appreciative of what they bring to the process. So
yeah. And vice versa, Miss Emma.
Yeah. Where to begin? I mean, again, our dynamic, I used to be student and he used to be teacher, right? So it comes from a place of like admiration, truly. Like, I will try to say this without getting emotional, but truly Choral Spectrum, specifically Jereme Martineau, has made me into the human leader, performer, all those good things that I am today. Like, full stop. That is the sentence right there. And so little Emma, like let alone freshman Emma, if she were to look at me now and see that I am having the opportunity to go back and not only just go back and help, but like in a role that I'm able to co-direct with this director that has changed me, like that's the dream. That's the dream, And so let me base this all off of that, truth. I think that it's been awesome because I come from a different stance in the way that I went to school for musical theater. So I'm very much the more like dance person in our rehearsals, and Mark's more the vocal. And that's how we sort of, bounce back and forth. But he always has his 2 cents on vocal, on choreo, and I always have my 2 cents on vocal. And it's good because it like has our spots, like our ending dance break, if you will, is a great shout
out to the Homie Award, best dance break. Let's go.
So that was originally a completely different dance break, given in September. Totally different, half the length, actually, fun fact. And in about December, we had like a tough conversation where we were like, I think it needs to change. I don't think it's doing what we need it to do. Mm-hmm. And so during break, I made it my passion project and came up with something, and we put it on them, made a few tweaks. And again, this is exactly what it is. Martineau looked at it and said, some things are working, some things aren't, helped me with like the blind spots of it, put it on stage, got some critiques at the first competition from some choreographer eyes. And they said, try the landing a little different. And then we found the perfect formula of exactly what we wanted for that ending dance break, right? Without like this given opportunity, right? I wouldn't have that opportunity to choreograph that last minute, which now like is award winning, right? But more importantly, it was the exact minute we needed to end that set for the kids. Like they needed something to feel like they like could drop that mic. And it was exactly what they needed. And so like that exact example shows the sort of like, yeah, like I'm young and like I have no fear in that sense. I was like, let's just make a new dance break. Like that's fine.
Why not?
And another example of the generational thing, Emma, too, because talk about just how selfless and giving and humble Tori Brindis is. Like this is the closer of our show, the last dance break, and she looks at Emma and goes, "Show me what you got." Like no absolute humility and just like take it. That's the faith that she had. So just generation she taught Emma, and then it's a crazy story of connections of generations.
Let alone Tori has been a big influence in my show choir career, if you will, having her come in my senior year and then throughout staying in contact, and this year having the opportunity to assist her with the Northeast groups. I got to help her with Waltham and street singers and all these things, and Choral Spectrum. She let me like help choreograph certain things, and so I was really able to see her process. And so it got to that point where I sent her the video, and I was like, we're thinking like of changing some things. What are your thoughts? And she's like, go for it, girl. Like all you. I was like,
to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
To be a fly on the wall for like, all of this. Oh, my little show choir nerd heart is exploding right now.
No, that's exactly it. It's like in the generations of it all, right? Like I feel like us, class of 2018, baby, like we're the next layer coming up, if you will. The layers above us, right? See that we very much have the potential and have the means to do so. And now we're getting these opportunities, if you want. And it's really exciting to see, one, to have the opportunity, but two, to see it like getting some traction. It's awesome.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. Show choir is it's a niche thing. It's a niche activity. And no one's path is linear to getting into like the choreography space, or sometimes the vocal space too, if you're starting up a new program. So it's very cool to see that the generation above us is now starting to bring us in as assistants and collaborators. It's very heartwarming because a lot of folks.
It's also really organic though, because they did it for us, right? Like John Frito brought me in, Kathy Munson brought me in to work, right? Becky Lucier and Connie Galley, right? MacGyver is a direct lineage to Alyssa and Waltham. Right?
Yes.
Now it's time for us. We're all in the last third or so of the run, right? It's time to pass it on. It's time to start like empowering the next generation of folks to keep this thing going, because the weirdest thing that you do see happen is you see some programs, the director retires and it dies. It just goes away, and because of what you were saying, because of that niche, like you gotta have a love of it, you gotta have a passion for it, or it doesn't work, and it takes those people to do it. So that's a testimony to you guys that your elders have started to pass the baton. So
yes. Closing thought on that, relating back to my director, Mr. Richard Sylvia. He would always end one of his speeches or something big with an acronym called DEPONA. DEPONA stands for Do It Passionately or Not at All. And that's what I really think is a testament of what the show choir world is if you have passion, it's going to work marvelously. And this leads me in.
That sums up Richie too.
Yes, very much so. One of my favorite mentors and human beings. Yes, shout out to Richard. So we've reached the end. Hey. I want to end on something a little bit lighter. So I'm stealing an idea from someone. Miss Jen Randall. One of
I know exactly what to ask. I love
what I'm gonna ask because I think it's always fun to talk about stuff like this. So you have to give me 3 different answers. So the 3 questions are, what is your favorite show choir show that you've ever seen live? Your favorite show choir show, it could be your favorite show choir show live or online that you have no connection to. The second one is your favorite show choir show that you have worked on and you had some sort of either your director, choreographer. And the last question is, and I think the last one is just,
Now I'm blanking too.
I think it's just favorite show choir number in general. It doesn't have to be a show. It could just be anything that you've seen. So like for me personally, my favorite show choir show that I've seen live is probably John Burroughs 2015. It was the Idol show that came to Andover that year. I remember being a freshman watching it. It was spectacular. It was so cool with their costumes and the numbers that they did. It was all about like idolizing your favorite singer, and there was a love story connected to it. Really flowed well. My favorite show choir number, I would have to say Shepherd Hill's opener from 2017. It's the Hell Doorstep song. It was from the Fahrenheit 451 show. And they had like these leather jackets on. It was so cool. Very, very punky and steampunk. That's the best way to describe it. And then favorite show that I was a part of. And that's a tough one too. So on the directing side, I think it had to be the show in 2020 that we didn't really get to showcase. We did breaking a world record show. And it was awesome. It was so good. Shout out to Brooks Mulder and Chance Gould who choreographed that show and helped us create it. It was actually the first show that I actually helped pick out songs for. So love that. And favorite show when I was a student, probably my senior year, we did it was a Good Songs Done Well show. It was all British artists. So it was really cool, really cute. Whoever wants to take this, now that you've had some time to think, sorry for putting y'all on the spot.
I can go. Do you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Best show or favorite show I've seen. I think I'm going to do one that I'm making my own rules here. I'm going to do one that I've like seen.
Yes.
One that I've seen on a okay. One that I saw in person. And honestly, like, I'm not confident this is even like the best show I've seen, but it just holds like place in my heart. Is 2015 Shepherd Hill Fantasy, their Planets. And not just shine. I was like, they pulled out Lady Gaga. I was like on the floor. Yes. Anyway, the reason why is because that was my freshman year, and I'm pretty sure it was the first. Like, we walked into our first competition, and I saw like their hair was all curly and the bump and everything, and then I saw them on stage, and I was like, oh my god, this is show choir, and that was my show choir moment, if you will, was watching Shepherd Hill Fantasy doing their Planet show. Like it will just hold a special place in my heart. Favorite show I've seen like online is probably a tie between me making any rules here. You're
good.
Loveland 2015 when they start with Smooth Criminal and Billie Jean.
Yes.
So good. And has recently been a inspiration for me, us putting together our MJ show right now. And also a tie with Clinton Attaché 2016 question mark when they did like the carnival theme show.
Yes. Underrated
No
show,
Place I'd Rather Be.
in my opinion.
But I think it's the one where it's like they did like a documentary or something on it. Something on like Amazon or something about that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that one. Okay, those are the ones I've seen. Ones I've worked on, honestly, easy answer at the moment is just this year. Like it's gonna forever hold a special place in my heart. I think that another special place in my heart is our 2020-2021 set, which is crazy because it never saw the light of day, if you will. But sometimes I go back on that video and I'm just like, wow, that would have done really well if we competed. I'm like, they were actually really good. And that was really clean. And those roll-offs were really awesome. So that one holds a special place too, because the kids were just doing it for themselves, and that's what mattered. I wrote down show choir moment. Is that okay? Can I just say like show choir moment?
Why not? We're making our own
I'm just making rules here.
Wait.
Emma's hosting now.
We're quote unquote mixing it up. We are mixing it up, y'all, and that's it.
Yeah, let's go. Okay. I'm really making my own rules because when I think of show choir moment, it's not even a moment that's on stage at all. It's this season when we did a cousin meetup in the back, like atrium, if you will, of Andover. I had text the directors of Waltham and Natick, so Kate Burns and Alyssa and Tom, and I was like, guys, I think we should all get together and force our kids to be friends, basically. I mean, they were already friends, but I was like, let's make it like a formal, like, meet and greet, basically. We called it, like, jokingly but lovingly, like the cousins meetup, because we're all choreographed by Tori.
Yes.
And through this year, by assisting Tori, I've been able to meet all these kids. And so I, in a way, are sort of like the through line between all these kids. And so we got them all in the cafeteria. And then before we knew it, they were all sitting outside. And before we knew it, they were all meeting each other and hugging each other, getting each other's Instagrams and having dance battles and like, it's crazy. And it was so awesome. And the pictures of that day I want framed like somehow in my room. And it was just an awesome moment. And from that day on, the kids are still like best friends, like talking to each other. They like planning meetups. It's awesome. And if nothing else, it's my favorite moment because it wasn't on stage, like because it was about the kids at all. And I think that in my time in Spectrum, there was a sort of unspoken like, oh, those are your competitors, right? Like, yeah, you can meet them, but you can't really be friends because those are your competitors. And I just want to take that and like break it and throw it away. Yeah. And I sort of started that. I think it was already started, but like in a formal way, started that this year of being like, no, we are cousins and cousins love each other and are friends, even if we compete against each other. And it's really awesome to see that naturally become a thing. And I think it'll be a thing for years, hopefully decades to come.
I love all of that. Very heartwarming. Like show choirs uniting. That's what we need more of. Yes.
All right. So I have two shows for live, and for me, it's most of these are moments where I really felt like my perspective on show choir changed. So back in 1991, way back in time, show choir in New England was a different place. Seek out some videos, a lot of step touches.
Yes.
And Eric Van Cleve brought out first edition to Waltham, and he brought the whole thing. Like, and mind you, this is 1991, so this is a whole different ball game than it was than it is now. Like he had in 91 transforming light up risers. I have no idea how that happens in 1991, but Eric Van Cleve made it happen, right? And that was the first time we saw confetti cannons and smoke machines, and you just like it was like being cavemen and seeing the future, right?
Yes.
And it transformed New England show choir. You can trace it back to that moment. You can trace it back to that's where we came out of the dark ages, married with Connie Galley's creativity in the story shows. Those two moments like transformed New England show choir. Yep. And more recently, gosh, I can't remember the year, but and I'm not a baseball guy. It's not my favorite. Twinsburg's baseball show.
So good.
So good. And
17.
Strangely profoundly moving, like in a very rootsy kind of Americana way, right? And the fact that the girls' dresses look like baseballs. I mean, the whole thing just blew my mind.
So cool.
Yeah. So uplifting and positive. And I was, at that point, I was really hungry for that creatively, and they really did that. So my favorite not live show, I'll never forget when one of my students came up to me with their phone and on a phone, mind you, this is not even on a computer later. And I saw the Prodigal show for the first time. And
how can I forget? Yes.
Through a small screen, like I wept at the end. So profoundly moving and transformative. Like, wow, that's something that show choir can do that I haven't tapped into yet. I haven't, right? As far as favorite shows, I traveled way back 2008 that I've been involved with. 2008, which was Tori's senior year. We did my whole year. That was my graduate recital, and I linked all of my music, concert choir, traditional music, show choir in 08, because we were engaged in the Iraq War at the time, and it was all anti-war and protest music. So it was our show choir show, and we had the theme of change one, and the theme was change one person's mind about the effect of war on the world. And then at the last competition, I said, I've been lying to you all year. The one person we were trying to change was you. And that's one of the most profound moments from a teaching standpoint that I had. And to echo Emma's sentiments, I'll never forget, there was a point at the beginning of this year where we had finally gotten the rights to Doom, to perform Doom. And a few of my students came up to me and said, Mr. Martineau, why are we doing this song? And they knew full well why. And I looked the two students right in the eye, who are two of our best students. I said, because I think it's time that we represent who we really are. And in that moment, and then to have them do what they did this year. I tell this year's group, they have claimed a seat at the head of the table. They are the most important choral spectrum in the history of the program because of what they did this year. So, and and I should have put that last, because the last one is just a favorite song, but I'll never forget John Burroughs' performance of The Pretender. That, first of all, I straight up stole that song that year. I think it must have been 2008 or 9, because I did it in 2010.
Yes.
Because the song was so incredibly powerful. But that was the first on video, the first time I saw those California groups do it at their level.
Oh my Lord.
Oh, right. So that was formative for me, for sure. So that's my list. So.
Oh, well, this has been so lovely getting to talk with you guys. I really appreciate this, like no other, being my first guest on this show. It's just going to help us snowball, get some eyes on New England show choir up here. We need it. We want to get some visitors up here. Let's get the competition up here from the Midwest, from down south. We're inviting y'all up here. It would be a good time.
Yes.
Yes.
Settle down.
Boston, come visit New York. Come see a Broadway show.
Yes. Well, again, I appreciate your time. I will definitely be in touch. And yeah, this has been the first episode of Beyond the Risers. Thank you again, Mr. Martineau and Miss Emma. This is going to be, hands down, probably one of my favorite memories to come.
Yeah. Thanks for giving us the opportunity. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
So fun.